Good morning, and guess what day it is, friends? It is the day of the game. Ohio State and Michigan kicking off in 2 hours up in Ann Arbor. I'm Tom Orr, joined by Tony Gerdeman and Kevin Noon. Tony, we count down to this day all year long. It is finally here. It is the game.
It is, and it's a bit different this year, but still always looking forward to it. And now it is here. And is it the last 2 hours that take the longest? I don't know. Maybe the show will go quickly and it'll get here even quicker than normal. But I know the anticipation you look forward to it all year long. There are times you find yourself just thinking about it, and then on the day it's here, it's like it's like you're trying to do every last minute preparation for the game you can, and you realize like, what do I have to do? Like I've done everything I can. I've written everything. I've prepared. Now it's just time to see what happens and then react from there. But it's here. I'm glad it's here, and you almost never know what you're going to see. I feel like this one is, even though we're all picking Ohio State, I still feel like I definitely think there's a chance Ohio State loses.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, you're going to send Lynn's Breezy OH off the cliff. I mean, because her nerves are already shot. I'm getting from the chat.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, I don't know, I always feel like this is the time of morning when Ohio State fans are about ready to jump off the cliff. Like, you can spend all week looking at the numbers and looking at the stats and looking at the matchups and go, okay, Ohio State should be better in like 3 of the 4 phases of the game and maybe all 4. And, there's not, you look at the personnel and it's not like Michigan has wildly underachieved with their personnel this year. It's just like they're good, but they're not amazing. And Ohio State has far better team in the talent composite, and Ohio State has the historical edge, and there should be a decent chunk of the stadium today that is full of people wearing scarlet and gray and not maize and blue, so it's not like it's going to be an incredibly hostile crowd, and it's not like that's an incredibly noisy stadium either. But Kevin, this is, you can be rational and think it through all week, and then you get to 8, 9, 10 in the morning for Ohio State fans, and it's like, well, but what if something goes wrong, and what if Ohio State loses today?
Yeah, you can know that Dennis Eckersley is going to throw that 3-2 backdoor slider. You still have to hit it. I mean, you know what Michigan's all about. You can feel comfortable about it, but you still have to get up into the box and make contact. So, yeah, I woke up this morning about 8 and, sat there and kind of reflected on some of the past games that I've been a part of and been able to witness, and just the whole process, and thought about the long strange journey from being an undergrad during the Cooper years to where we kind of stand now. And I don't want to sit there and say that it's kind of taken for granted, but in some ways it might be taken for granted. But if Ohio State comes out of this with a win, which I'm expecting Ohio State to do, cherish it, because it's going to be a hard fought win. It's going to be a hard fought win in Ann Arbor at the Big House after they ducked these Buckeyes last year. After they ducked them. Let's just trying to get the chat riled up here at 10:03 in the morning. I think myself, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I picked them to win by 28. That's just an insurmountable mountain. But, I felt that way on Monday. I felt that way on Wednesday. I felt that way on Friday. So now I'm here on Saturday, and that, that's, if I felt that way all week, I'm going to feel that way riding forward now.
Yeah, and this is a game where it feels like if Ohio State gets ahead, there's a chance Michigan just kind of folds. And neither of these teams has really had to play from behind much this year. Ohio State has been in some close ones. Michigan's been in some close ones. Michigan, though, has not really had to play from behind. So, Tony, if they do have to play from behind, if Ohio State gets off to a fast start, and I don't know that I'm expecting Ohio State to just, put up 14 points in the first quarter. But if they do, it seems like this Michigan team is, maybe mentally and maybe schematically / personnel wise, not necessarily built to come from behind.
No, and I would agree with that. And Ryan Day has said how they prepare for one of 3 things to happen. Either you start well and get out to a lead, you start poorly and get out to a deficit, or you're even. I wonder what Michigan's plans are. And you have plans for all 3 of those. You know what you're going to do and how you're going to respond to all 3 of those scenarios. I wonder what Michigan's plan is if they go down 14-0 in the first quarter. How much have they thought about that? Do they even let themselves think about that? Or are they so like, we're going to punch them in the mouths, we're just going to come after them? And then if that doesn't work, then it's like, well, that was the plan. Now what do we do? And so how many alternatives do they have? And yeah, the weather is a little bit cold, and there may be some precipitation in terms of some snow. Does that hinder Michigan's chances of throwing the ball a little bit and being able to get the ball downfield or at least move the chains? I think people talk about how the weather, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, will diminish Ohio State's offense. It's not like it's going to help Michigan's offense. So there's two teams playing in this weather, and as Ryan Day always says, you just have to handle it better than the other team. So I Michigan, I think, is more equipped mentally to handle a 14-point first quarter deficit than they have been in the past. Physically, I don't know. Like what?
Yeah. I think if Michigan had their choice, they would run the ball and try and control the clock. And if you're down 14 points, you can still do that, but you'd better score on that next drive, because if you're down 21 points, then you really can't do that. And then you're really predictable and really one score. And, that's where, that happened. You go back to the 2003 game. That's what happened to Ohio State. They had a plan to come in and be able to stay multidimensional, and Michigan just kind of ran all over them, and Ohio State fell down 21-0 and never, it seemed like they were coming back, and they were coming back, and they're coming back, and they never quite got there because they couldn't get Chris Perry off the field. This Michigan rushing offense isn't quite as good as the 2003 rushing offense. And, this Ohio State rush defense is also pretty darn good. Let's get to the super chat from Ryan Dawes. There's been enough stress on important items. Just enjoy the game unless you're a TTUN fan. I mean, you can enjoy the game anyway. I mean, this is the game that has defined both of these programs for, 50 years and beyond. So this is the day. If you can't enjoy this game, the lead up to this game, you can't look forward to this game. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you deriving enjoyment from if you can't enjoy this game, at least the lead up to it? If someone's going to lose, and that it's okay to not enjoy that, but you should be looking forward to this game. Like, even as an Ohio State student in the 1990s, I still look forward to this week every year, even knowing the guy in charge of the program doesn't have a tremendous record in this game, but still look forward to it every week. Still, it was still that was still a week when class attendance was not exemplary across the Ohio State campus, even knowing the history there. So, it is. You should be able to enjoy this either way. Lots of comments on the weather. So let's touch on the weather. It looks like kind of right around freezing, 32 degrees, give or take. Some snow flurries, not a ton of wind. I know everyone just every week wants to jump off the roof at the thought of like, oh, it might rain it might rain for 15 minutes or something. Or it might be, it might be misting for the whole game. Like, Tony, have we seen anything slow down this Ohio State offense weather-wise this year? Is there any reason to be deeply concerned about some snowflakes today?
No, and the thing is, this Ohio State quarterback, what Ryan Day has been able to produce at quarterback, is so much better equipped to handle the weather than past Ohio State quarterbacks who have not. Like, I remember 2003 seeing the rain in Madison and going, oh, well, Craig Krenzel's not going to be able to throw in this. The Ohio State will not be able to throw. Now they're going to be forced to run, and Wisconsin's going to be able to slow them down. So, Braxton Miller, JT Barrett, those guys, their numbers would drop this time of year. The numbers may still drop, but like these guys now, Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, can cut through the weather better than past quarterbacks. So I don't think it's as much of an issue. I think you still have to catch the ball though, and you still the ball control issues are going to be there no matter what. But weather doesn't concern me as much as it used to.
I want to jump in. I threw the forecast up there in the chat and the thing is, I think everybody's assuming this 1 to 3 inches of snow is all going to fall at once. That it's going to be all right. We can see the green grass, and whoop, 3 inches of snow are going to be on the ground. Well, it's 1 to 3 inches of snow. The snow could start around 11. I mean, I think I've seen a couple of flakes on the pregame shows, but it's going to be spread out, and then it's going to slow down around 3, and then it'll pick back up around 4. So, I mean, if it's if it's very slow, if it's very gradual, it's not going to be a case of where it's not going to be the snowball. We're not going to see 5,000 punts in this game and everything else. So, I mean, it's kind of like that misconception when it comes to recruiting and people saying, "Oh, I hope you enjoy playing in the snow up at Ohio State or wherever." And it's very few games end up being like legitimately affected by the snow. It's we in this part of the country we get the snow in January and February. It's not generally right now. So, it's going to be cold. Your bones are going to ache when you get hit hard, but that's just going to happen, period. And as Tom said, it's not going to be super windy. So I don't see it being a tremendous detriment.
Yeah, and it looks like, I mean, it's going to snow some during the game, like Kevin said, but I think the majority of it's coming after 5 o'clock. So 1 to 3 inches, with the majority of it coming after the game, is like, okay, half an inch to an inch, inch and a half. I mean, that's not, spread out over a couple hours. That's not going to make a huge difference. Getting hit hard and making your bones ache. Great post this morning from Bill Green on the Ask the Insiders board about Michigan's game plan. And, he's got great connections, and reached out to someone at Michigan and just basically said, we are going to hit them all day, and they don't like to be hit. CJ Stroud's been sitting pretty all year, going to get hit and not like it this week. The wide receivers are pretty boys that are going to get hit. And that sounds like that's the plan for Michigan, is just hit them. So if you, Tony, are Ohio State, and that now coming in, and I think you would probably assume that was the game plan coming in, because matching up just man-to-man is probably not going to be a winning recipe for Michigan today. So if you do that, does that make you just want to go, okay, we are going to throw it. We're going to spread it out. We're going to, spread you out. We're going to keep, don't let them get those clear shots at you. Or is it, okay, you want to do that? Like, have fun. Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo are your best players on defense. Let's let DeJuan Jones land on you 15 times, and we'll see. I mean, I know you guys are super tough, but we'll see how super tough you are after DeJuan Jones has crushed you 15 times.
I think there's some defeatism. Like, if you do that, you just run at Aiden Hutchinson with whomever, be it Thayer Munford and Nicholas Petit-Frere, or Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones, and just continue to put him on his back. Like, you take the fight to them, then there's some like, oh, well, okay, so now we're getting beat up. But if you start throwing it around and it's like, you guys are lucky we can't catch up with you, or else we'd beat you up. And there is some like, let them catch them. Let them, okay, you want to get into this. We'll keep the ball on the ground. Come get us. And then you just run right at them type of thing. I completely believe that's what Michigan is telling their players. I also believe Ryan Day understands that and has been telling the players, telling the Buckeyes about this is what's coming. And he's been preaching toughness all year long, the last 2 years, toughness. Mm-hmm. And it's something where I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of a message around there saying, hey, these guys want to be tough. They ducked you last year. Show them what tough is. Like, they're so tough that they didn't want to play you last year. That's how tough they are. And now this is your opportunity to show them exactly who you are. And because I understand that image of Ohio State right now. They throw the ball around. You can't be tough if you throw the ball all over the place and your receivers are only 6'1", 6 foot, 190 pounds. They're not the biggest guys. So, like, go ahead and beat them up if you think you can. And it's going to be up to Ohio State to respond. And it's up to those players to respond, not with penalties, but either just not getting touched or getting back up, getting into the end zone, moving the chains. And like, you can take the fight out of them by not letting it bother you, or by scoring. And then again, if you're 14, 21 points, you're up by that point, then where is that fight? What good has it done? Like, Michigan needs to see some positive results from the fights, not just a bunch of, we pushed you down. And it's like, well, they're moving the chains again. It's first down. Good job.
Mm-hmm. Super chat from Chris Hops. Chances Day breaks tendency and comes out like Clemson in 2019 and runs it right down their throat. He loved to do that his first year. Also, any leaks on the availability surprises. The availability report comes out at 10:45. I will tell you, there have been rumors about C.J. Stroud this week. C.J. Stroud is playing, so you can keep your toaster out of the bathtub. C.J. Stroud will be playing today. We'll have the full availability report at 10:45. Kevin, I mean, does Ryan Day break tendency? I mean, we see Ryan Day get very pass happy in big games. Does he break tendency and basically do what Tony just said, just ram it right down their throats?
I mean, you could break the tendencies, but if your tendencies lead to success, why break? I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, if you could sit there and have some short perimeter passing and do some things of that nature, why do you need to change it up? I mean, I can understand what Chris is asking there. I can understand the sentiment, and I'm not saying that isn't a good move, but if you can get to the edges and do some of those things, why abandon that? So I don't feel as motivated to get away from a winning formula, but yeah, we've seen Ryan Day do it before, and there could be something to it.
Greg Birch says, today's the day I fully believe that Stroud punches his Heisman ticket for real as the national media is concerned. I mean, last week was pretty darn good, and Stroud is a pretty clear favorite right now. He is minus 200 on the Heisman boards at Vegas Insider. Second place is Bryce Young at plus 150. But yeah, I mean, if he has another good game this week, Bryce Young is going to have Auburn this week, and they should beat Auburn, but Auburn is not, Auburn's 6-5 and nothing spectacular. And then next week he's going to have Georgia, and that is not a game that's going to lend itself to piling up huge numbers. So Bryce Young and potentially C.J. Stroud have games next week that are not going to lend themselves to piling up huge numbers. But C.J. Stroud has a game where if he has a good game today, I don't know what Bryce Young does to catch up because he's playing a worse team today. And then both teams are, presumably playing Wisconsin and Georgia next week where they're not going to put up a lot of numbers. El Suzabo, did you see all the whining from Michigan about the ref today? Kevin, are you up to speed on the ref?
Well, and they're talking about one of the, like the side judge, back judge, or whatever that was involved, that they're saying was involved in the spot in 2016, and there's a picture of an official, tapping Mike Weber on the posterior. Not that people don't realize that kind of happens all the time. They all have to operate under a certain small amount of space, so there's not like this adversarial role where they're ready to shank each other at all times. It's going to be this Larry Smith crew. Larry Smith will be the referee, will be the white hat. I've just gotten into the stat feed and found the officials for the game. But yeah, the excuses are starting already. With that. And again, I'm not going to say that that's unique to Michigan fans or to football fans. I mean, everybody, you saw Cowboy Joe West go out there and you knew you were going to get screwed in baseball. So, or Angel Hernandez. So I get it, but yeah, it's a lot of unnecessary whining and crying and everything else. So yeah.
You can text me the stat broadcast password later, Kevin. It's Sue says, I saw Ryan Day on ESPN earlier. He looked like he hasn't slept. I mean, that's kind of Ryan Day's default look. I don't know what it is. He always seems to have bags under his eyes. And, I'm sure he did not sleep real well last night. This is a game where, you spend all year thinking about it. There are countdown clocks in there. There's walls full of photos. There's monitors constantly playing highlights of this game. Like, yeah, I bet you have not slept a whole lot this week because he's been working overtime to make sure every possible T is crossed and I is dotted. So that's one to keep an eye on.
Can I go back to something Kevin said about the ref patting Mike Weber on the butt because of the close quarters? We've all been in close quarters, including the Michigan postgame room. I've never had to pat anybody on the butt because of it. I'm just saying, like,
that wasn't your reason for patting me on the butt. Is that what you're saying?
I was going to say, Tony, don't know.
Do we need to take this offline? Maybe we need to take this conversation offline. Gary Lewis says bad weather will make a Michigan comeback more difficult, like Tony said. Yeah, I mean, if the weather gets worse, this is the the old this is true in baseball. We'll go back to Kevin's baseball analogies. If the rain is coming in, you want to make sure you get a lead before the rain comes in, because if the game gets canceled, then you
Right.
can kind of steal a shortened win. In football, if the rain is coming in or it's about to get substantially worse, the wind's going to pick up or it's going to start snowing sideways, you want to have a lead because you're much better off just having to run the clock and not have to do as much at that point. It just doesn't sound like this is going to be a game where the weather's going to be nutso. So I wouldn't if this was 3 inches of snow during the game, that's one thing. This does not. It just doesn't sound like a game where they're going to have gators out on the field, snow plowing the field off at halftime or anything like that. It doesn't. This is not the old snowplow game for the New England Patriots in the early '80s or whenever it was, late '70s. So. It should, and as someone said, the advisory doesn't start until PFLAW. The advisory doesn't start until 3 p.m. Should be able to get out of there without adverse weather. Jordan wants to know: did you guys have any pregame rituals in college?
Drinking.
Kevin?
Drinking.
Yeah. What a surprise.
I mean,
yeah. Tony?
I mean, if we're being honest, I mean, I feel like y'all are my family now, so there's just no reason for me to lie. I mean, especially for this game, you would end up going out to Purity or somewhere like that on High Street. And I know I'm talking old time here because none of those bars are there now or haven't been there for 20 plus years. But you close the bars at 2, you get in line for Papa Joe's to get in line for kegs and eggs. You send your pledges back to the fraternity house to bring you beers to put in your pockets. Papa Joe's opens its doors at 6. You go to Papa Joe's, you leave, you go home, you sleep for about 30 minutes, and then you go right back out to the bars, and then you go to the game. So that was always my ritual for Michigan. I mean, for a normal home game, maybe not as much. I certainly had certain, and I was there during the Cooper years, so there were multiple losses a year. So if I wore a shirt and they lost, I wouldn't wear that shirt anymore for that season because it was obviously out of luck. If I wore a shirt and they won, I would wear that shirt again next week. I wasn't very good about doing laundry, so you do the math on that. But since I probably spilled more beer on me than I drank, it really didn't matter.
I'd never drank before games or during games. Yeah. I wanted to just I was there for the game. Not that there's anything wrong with drinking and doing all of that before games because, we're all adults here. But my pregame ritual we would walk from wherever, and, from our apartment, I've lived over on North 4th, so it's a pretty good walk, but it's a way to experience the entire, there's music going the entire walk, and then you walk up like Fraternity Row or wherever, and then we would get subs at Charlie's Steakery, and because they were open, and there I don't know that there were a lot of noon games at that time, so there's a lot of 3:30s, but so we would get that for lunch, and then walk to the stadium, and just the experience of the walk itself. We almost used to go to crew games when they were at Ohio Stadium just to do that walk. We never did it, but it was part of the just. It was fun, just the entire ritual of it, and fight songs, fighting or playing on through all of these different houses and things like that. So that was about the extent of it. You just go, you get some lunch, and then after the game, we would, you either go to parties. A lot of times we would just come back and rewatch the game on the VCR. That's kind of how nutty we were.
You might have to explain what a VCR is. We do have some young followers here.
Yes.
It's like a DVR, but with tape. It's like a cassette tape. We'll get to what the cassette tape is later. I was not a pregame drinker at all. We would usually go walk over the old B-dubs on Frambies High. Right? Frambies High, or
ish.
The original B-dubs, like the very first B-dubs, and we would get wings there when they actually had wings, and when 10-cent wing night was actually 10 cents or 25 cents, and not $1.75 wing night. So yes, good times. From Jordan, super chat. Thoughts about rumors yesterday that LSU coaches and players followed Lincoln Riley and a $96 million deal is on the table. I mean, yes, they players did follow him. There was a report that it was a done deal, but it was someone who I think is not a particularly credible source. Like there are certain reporters following, cover LSU. I mean, like if Ross Dellinger tells me that there's a deal in place, I would go, there's a deal in place. There are. I would never besmirch the name of Sir Yacht, but there are people who have
Sir Shrimp
a better track record of credibility of not just making crap up. So that's not to say it couldn't happen. they very obviously have been pursuing him. Half the time when something like that comes out, it's just someone looking for a little glory and looking for a little clout. And the other half the time, it's an Oklahoma State fan trying to stir up crap the day before Bedlam. Like,
If you
so
get
yeah,
out first,
I
if
would
you
not,
get
I
out
would
first
not
and
be
you're right, everybody's thrilled about it.
sure, sure.
If you fade into obscurity, if you're not, because I mean,
Mhm.
that's how that game works. I mean, in terms of
Yeah.
of that anonymous random person who started
Mhm.
his Twitter account 3 days ago and everything else
Mhm.
has the egg icon. Oh, look at me! I was right there. Well, you throw enough, you know what,
Mhm.
against the wall, something might stick.
And if you're wrong, you can always say, well, something changed. That's a thing that happens too. So, yeah, I would not be shocked if it happened, but I don't think it's done. It could, this could happen. This has been something that's been rumored a bunch of places. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I could throw out, I don't know what else is open. Florida. I could throw out Billy Napier to Florida is done, and then Billy Napier has been linked to Florida. So if Billy Napier takes a Florida job, am I right? Like, well, yes, but is that because I actually know anything, or is it just because I've read the same reports about Billy Napier potentially being interested in the Florida job, and maybe Florida's interested in him? Lane Kiffin to Miami. I'm calling that shot before they even fire Manny Diaz. Now there have been reports that Manny Diaz is in the hot seat, and there have been reports that Lane Kiffin's interested in Miami, and I believe that that's true. But anyone can say anything. So, mm, mm. Tony,
Wouldn't you
sometimes.
rather, if
Mhm.
you are Lincoln Riley, wouldn't you rather deal with the SEC from Baton Rouge than Norman?
You have a much better recruiting base in Baton Rouge. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I don't think it's going to go great for Oklahoma not being the big dog in its league. Like that just seems like, I mean, Texas is oh boy, Texas in the SEC West. That's going to go great. Absolutely. Yeah, 4-8 for quite a while. Okay, cool, hook 'em. Like, yeah, I don't. It seems like you have a much better recruiting base in LSU. Like you have access to a lot more 300-pound dudes in LSU than you do in Oklahoma. So what has Oklahoma's problem traditionally been? Not enough really good 300-pound dudes in the middle of that defensive line. So seems like that. I mean, I can understand why he would want to take it, but I don't put a ton of stock in he has absolutely already taken it, done deal, until Ross Dellinger reports it, for example, or someone like that, and not random dude 69 on Twitter. Jaden Cook, when Michigan plans to blitz on third down, what will Coach Day do? Tony.
Well, it just depends on where the blitz is coming from. You go to the unoccupied zone or the quick dump off, something of that nature. There are plans for different blitzes, different attacks. Uh, there's any number of things that for each individual play there is the reaction to it. If this, then this. So it's just depends on where the blitz is coming from and whether or not CJ Stroud sees it. That'll be the key. First, he must see it, and then he must react. And really, for me, that's where this game comes down to. Is just I know we talk about yards per carry. We haven't done it yet, which is
Mm-hmm.
pretty insane. But just CJ Stroud handling the Michigan defense, handling the blitzing, the pass rushing, and seeing how well he performs. His performance today is going to be key. I think Ohio State can win if he does not play well, but it'll be a tight
Mm-hmm.
one. And can Michigan win if Cade McNamara doesn't play well? That's a tough one for me, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm just glad we're not talking stats right now. I'm so talked out on stats and everything else at this point. I agree. I mean, you have to have that clock going off in the back of your mind in terms of, all right, I've been standing back here a second. I should probably be ready to move the pocket, step up, maybe even run, maybe even eat it and run. So it'll be interesting to see, how they handle it. But the good news is that I don't see the same type of talent on the interior line from Michigan that I see from those ends. And if the ends come crashing in, and you can just kind of move right by it, I think it's going to be fine. And we're again, and not to recycle lines from previous chats that we've done, it's not like these guys each have 30 sacks a year. It's not like each of them are putting up 3 sacks a game. So obviously some teams are figuring it out. they've used the Penn State game over and over and over and over again in terms of showing, well, this is what Michigan's capable of doing. Yes, that is what Michigan's capable of doing, but Penn State's offensive tackles are not very good. So it was like several years ago, a young Isaiah Prince getting victimized by Taco Charlton. And we've seen those highlights over and over and over and over again. And yes, it happened. And yes, you have to acknowledge it. But it's kind of the same thing going on there. So, you know what? I expect Ojabo and I expect Hutchinson to be able to get to Stroud a couple of times. But, you know, it's just going to be a matter of how Stroud recognizes it, how Stroud is able to adjust to it, and how Ohio State adjusts to it. That's going to really give us an idea of what type of game we might be in store for.
Well, and Aiden Hutchinson has, he's tied for first in the Big Ten in sacks with 10 with David Ojabo. 5.5 of those sacks have come in Big Ten play, which puts him like fourth in the Big Ten. 3 of those 5.5 came against Penn State. So a lot of over half of what he's done in the Big Ten has come in that one game against 2 very underwhelming offensive tackles. So he's been a bit quiet over the course of the entire Big Ten season, even though he does create a ton of pressure and he moves the quarterback. They're very aware of him. So he does get chipped a lot. Like there's a lot of attention put on him, but in terms of getting to the quarterback, it's not a weekly thing with him in Big Ten play right now.
Yeah, Nick M says, I think bad weather is better for Michigan. CJ is a Cali boy. I mean, it's not like CJ Stroud just got off a plane in Columbus like 2 days ago. He's been in Columbus for a year and a half. I don't know that he's any less acclimated to cold weather at this point than anyone else. So
I mean, I'm a Cali
not
boy.
sure.
I don't get sacked every time I walk out the door. It just maybe every third play I get sacked. But I mean, you get used to it eventually.
Nick is a Michigan fan. He says, does anyone think Michigan has a good shot? I mean, I guess it depends on what does good shot mean. Does Michigan have a 25 or 30% chance of winning this game? Sure.
FPI I believe so. I don't know if I believe it's that high.
There's a way they win this game. If Stroud has a bad game, sure. If they can really identify something in Donovan Edwards in the passing game or something like that, and they can hit some big plays on it, and Ohio State is unable to adjust to solve that problem, then sure, there's a way they win this game. But, I think on the whole, and Kevin doesn't want to get into stats, but don't worry, as you were saying, you didn't want to get into stats. I pulled up all the stats again. I mean, Ohio State has better yard per rush goes to Ohio State. Better yards per pass goes to Ohio State. Better yards per run rush on defense goes to Ohio State. Like, there's an awful lot about this that suggests that Ohio State's going to be able to have put up a sufficient number of points where if Hutchinson and Ojabo can't pressure Stroud or can't consistently pressure Stroud, if they have time, I mean, as a Michigan fan, honestly, how comfortable are you with the defensive backfield looked pretty good against Rutgers, so I'm sure it's going to go fine against Ohio State. Like, I mean, how confident are you really? Like, it's been good this year. They've been good this year. Which passing attack exactly have they faced that's comparable to Ohio State? And again, remember, it's not snowing sideways. It's not 15, 20-mile-an-hour winds and snowing. It's just snowing. And it's been cold in Columbus for a while. It's not like this is the first time it's been cold all fall. So, Ohio State has been practicing in this for a little while. Stroud is going to play. We're going to get to the full availability report in about 12 minutes when it comes out, but Stroud is going to play. So I just, I think an awful lot has to go right for Michigan to win. And Ohio State can just kind of play, unless Michigan plays completely out of their minds or Ohio State plays the worst game they've played in 2 years. I don't really see it for Michigan today. Super chat from Jordan Kapler. The only stat that matters is time of possession. Kevin, do we have we have the penalty box when Tony says something dumb and then we just go to the 2 box of you and me. Can we put Jordan in the penalty box? Is that possible? Or
yes.
I'm going to take that as a no.
I mean, I could ban him for 5 minutes, but I mean, I don't think Jordan would appreciate that, and I would probably forget to unban him, and then I would get all sorts of DMs on Twitter about you son of a blank. Why'd you do that?
Tom, doesn't it mean more in this game than most games, though?
No, not really. No, I mean, Tony, what is
really
the stat?
think about it.
Tony, I'm going to let you tell people what the one stat that that has correlated 100% with the winner of the Ohio State Michigan game every year since 2002. Tony, what is that stat? I'm tired of talking about it.
It is yards per carry since I believe 2001, 2. The team that has averaged a more yards per carry in the game has won said game. So you look at Ohio State's running game, they average close to a yard better per carry than Michigan. You get into Big Ten play, that's even more so. And again, this is a Big Ten game, so it's okay to use Big Ten only stats here. And Michigan's running game has taken a dip. Ohio State's running game has stayed level, which gives you an idea of they can run it whenever. Michigan, as the talent has gotten better that they're playing, the opposition has gotten better. Their numbers are getting worse. Ohio State will be the best run defense they faced this year, so it's to expect Michigan's running game to be better than their average would be a surprise. That's not usually how things work. So everything is pointing to Ohio State having the better yard per carry average in this game, which that's all you need to know. Unless, Tom, Ohio State never has the ball. You have to admit, say if Michigan has the ball, say 50 minutes, Ohio State has the ball for 10 minutes. You can't tell me that time of possession is not important.
Well, what happens if you have a bunch of one-play drives? What happens if you have
Kevin,
a bunch of defensive
please.
scores?
Nick would like to issue a correction. He is not a Michigan fan, graduated from Ohio State. Please take that back. Tom, I demand you take that statement back. I mean, his comments all week have read basically like
all week.
He's
forever.
A dialed back version of King Bronco. So yeah, I mean, that's fine. You can perpetually be trying not to jump off the roof at every Ohio State game. I mean, they've won every game but one this year, and they've looked pretty darn good in pretty much all of them. So yeah, it is not 100% likely. I mean, if you want every game to be Ohio State Akron, like that's okay. Otherwise, like they're going to play some good teams. They play in a decent conference. They play in the good half of a decent conference. It's just, Tayun says last year the line was 30 on OSU. I mean, that is a game that was. I was very disappointed to not see that game because that felt like a game where you could see something you've like never seen before. That was everything was set up for that to be, a game completely unlike anything you've ever seen in this series before. That was a real bummer. That was a real bummer to find out that game was canceled last year. It's always a bummer to not have that game played. But Jordan Nofke says Michigan has zero chance today. They're bigger frauds than Michigan State. Now, I don't think I agree with that. I think that Michigan matches up with Ohio State a lot better than Michigan State does. I mean, Kevin, do you agree with that? I know Michigan State beat Michigan, and Ohio State clobbered Michigan State. So if you want to go transitive property, okay, Ohio State by 53 today. But I just, matchup wise, it seems like Michigan matches up a lot better with Ohio State than Michigan State did.
Yeah, I think they do, and I don't know how much of that might be just the bias of the rivalry, but I don't think it's a bias in terms of the rivalry. Michigan State has a more explosive offense that Ohio State was able to keep in check, but I think that Michigan's ability to have more of a station-to-station run game as opposed to Kenneth Walker, who could hit some of these home runs, and I think that going back to the greatest stat of all time of possession, that station-to-station running game keeps the opposing offense off the field a little bit. And then defensively, I'm going to take Hutchinson and Ojabo over Jacob Panasuk, and that's kind of really it. And while I don't think that the Michigan secondary has really been tested, I don't think that the Michigan secondary is really remarkable outside of Daxton Hill. I think that they just are more athletic. And let's not forget, too, that Ohio State faced a Michigan State team that was kind of depleted. They didn't have their big defensive tackle, Barrow. They had a very limited linebacker in Quavaris Crouch. So I think that just Michigan, in terms of the Jimmies and Joes that it has, is just a little bit of a tougher matchup.
I also think the the fact that Michigan probably won't go down like 21-0 within the first 6 seconds, their
Mm-hmm.
offense will be able to stay balanced, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Michigan State's immediately had to throw the ball to catch up. So in that way, Michigan's offense today will be more of a challenge than Michigan State's, because Michigan State's was immediately rendered one-dimensional, and Ohio State can handle that. And they were pressured, and just the idea that you have to be perfect on every possession makes every possession that much more difficult. And with Michigan, I assume, not getting down by that, they can play a little bit freer. There's more room for error. They can run or throw, or run, and punt. But I think they have more options available to them, which will make it a little bit more difficult. Maybe not more difficult for Ohio State, but you're going to have to be aware of more things.
All right, super chat from DK. Favorite play from the game, minus the claret wheel route in 2002. The crowd went from an anxiety attack to exploding like I've never heard before. That's a good one.
I know
Yeah, I'm
mine.
gonna have to go back. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back to like my student days. Maybe the toss play to Michael Wiley right at the start of the '98 game, where it was everyone was just it was the same thing. Ohio State fans were just waiting for the roof to fall in, and the first drive they just go right down the field and score. It was like, oh, that's new. They didn't just kick 3 field goals in the first half. They went down. That one jumps to mind. The
Troy
4th and
Smith,
1.
Anthony Gonzalez in 05.
That's a good one. The 4th and 1, Jonathan Wells run in 2001. I think that was the one that made it 14-0 and not 21-0. But yeah, Jonathan Wells with his 3 first half touchdowns. That was a good one. A bunch from the 2006 game. That you would take the Beanie Wells run in the 2006 game, or the play action pass to Ted Ginn in the 2006 game.
You had the Pittman long run as well too in that game.
Ted Ginn punt return in 2004. I mean, there's some real good ones. Tony, what about you? Now that I've taken all of them.
Yeah, that's why I jumped in. I know you're selfish. You're selfish.
I was thinking the Jonathan Wells run is the thing that started everything. It has started this run, in my opinion. It set the tone, and Ohio State has continued to play well off, not just because of that, but I think when that happened, everybody was like, okay, things are different. But also that Ted Ginn punt return in 2004, because he almost had one before that as well, and got brought down. But like that punt return, first of all, you didn't know whether he was supposed to get it or Santonio Holmes, and Ginn grabbed it at the end, and then you've got the great Brent Musburger call to make it even more. I believe it was Musburger, but like, yeah, I was immediately thinking Jonathan Wells, but then as you mentioned the Ted Ginn thing, like I always go back to 2004. I think it was the first year I had a DVR, and man, I wore that thing out with watching Ted Ginn stuff, because I had every game and this is the YouTube grainy highlights of Ted Ginn are just, as I've said it before, it's just very unfortunate. People should they need to re-release, and do it all over, and crank up the technology, get that into like 4K somehow. And I mean, if they can colorize pictures from 1880, can we get Ted Ginn into 4K college days?
Oh boy. I got to play.
George Lucas digitally remasters the Ted Ginn highlight reel.
I got to play for you just for the significance in terms of that game. How about the Malik Hooker interception in 16?
Mm-hmm.
Because that offense, I was just watching that on BTN before the ESPN Gameday started, and then obviously before we started this. And I mean, that offense couldn't do anything in that game up until that point. I mean, that was, it wasn't the most spectacular play in terms of having to make some sort of crazy catch or whatever, but I mean, just in terms of significance, because what happens if Ohio State loses that 16 game? I mean, how does that change the trajectory of things? So I felt that was a pretty significant one.
Tyvis Powell interception
playoffs after that.
The Tyvis Powell interception in 2013 on the 2-point conversion for the game. I mean, hard to get bigger than that one. I mean, so
the Will Allen interception at the end of 2002.
Oh yeah. We're just filibustering for 30 seconds, or wait. I'm just waiting until we get to 45.
Yeah, so we're gonna get the availability report in 1 minute. I just want to touch on this from Monos 28. The line being -7 is a joke. It's free money. Hard to see this game being that close. honestly, that's the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause with this. Like, because the public money has to be so heavy on Ohio State because everyone is thinking that way. And it's like, I mean, I've watched every snap these two teams have played this year. That's what I think too. But it's like the line hasn't moved. So someone with a lot of money who spends a lot of time thinking about this is putting a lot of money on Michigan. So that's the only thing that kind of gives me pause there. Kevin, my clock just clicked over to 10:45. Let's punch up that availability report. All right, no game time decisions today. On the unavailable list, Seven Banks. I think that's the big one on this, and Paula Ie Naote.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the names on there are all people we more or
Master
less
Teague is
know
on
about.
there again after
Master Teague's on there.
last week.
Yeah, and G. Scott is has not really been playing a ton. Master Teague, third running back. That could be significant. I don't think, to me, Tony, there's anyone on here that is a game-changing name. Seven Banks, we kind of heard last week that the game time decision was maybe not so much as game time decision as they had suggested. Paula Ie Naote, like, they're pretty thin at linebacker this week. So if Michigan's able to run the ball, that could be an issue, where you get a little thin at linebacker. I'm guessing you're going to see a lot more Craig Young this week with Naote out. Master Teague, again, it's a depth issue there because you would assume that Henderson and Mayan Williams are getting the bulk of the carries, but Teague getting 5 to 8 carries, or if it does get a little more lopsided, Teague getting more carries in the second half. That's potentially a little bit of a concern. I mean, which one of those is the biggest concern to you, Tony?
In terms of concern, probably just the fact that they are down a couple of corners, because it's not just Seven Banks, it's also Demario McCall, where, he doesn't necessarily play, but he played last week. And when Denzel Burke came out of the game, then they had to go to Legend Cavazos. So they're kind of thin there. Now, the good thing is Cavazos has played, and I don't expect them to rotate three corners. It's going to be Cameron Brown and Denzel Burke for the majority of the snaps while the game is still in doubt, I would assume. So like that's okay. You're okay there. For me, it's even losing Palai'i and Naoteote. We expected Craig Young to play more, and really, I think him having to cover is it suits Ohio State's offense more, because I don't know what kind of cover guy Naoteote is. We've seen Craig Young handle that. Now, he's not played a ton of snaps. He's played he's practiced mostly at Bullet. And so now, assuming he is the Sam / cover safety type of walkout linebacker, outside linebacker, and a 3 linebacker look. So yeah, again, they're thin there. They've got 6 healthy linebackers. Who knows how healthy Cody Simon is? He's had a shoulder issue all year long, and they're not going to play Reed Carrico. So it's not like they're just overwhelming in number of bodies. But I do think the 3 guys that they have healthy in Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers and Craig Young, like, those guys are your top guys in this defense for what they want to do. Craig Young can give them some versatility, and he's a guy that there's not a lot of film on. So what does Michigan know about him? Who knows? I mean, he could be some sort of we talk about wrinkles. What's the wrinkle this year? What's it going to be? Like, he could be one of those wrinkles. Now, Michigan will have to respond and figure out a way to maybe try to take advantage of him. But I think he could be a good matchup for Ohio State in terms of covering, in terms of blitzing, and just being an extra guy down in the box against Michigan's running game.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, how big of a concern is the Master Teague thing to you?
I mean, I feel bad for the kid if this is, his last Michigan game. I mean, obviously he had the big game in terms of rushing the entire second half against Michigan State. I think that this team will be fine with the combo of Henderson and Mayan Williams. I mean, obviously Evan Pryor would be the third guy there to be able to go, but I don't see that as much of a concern as I would in terms of depth at linebacker, or maybe depth at corner. When I was typing the list up, Obviously you don't want to see any of these guys miss the time. I mean, there have been your season long injuries. You know that Tyler Friday's going to be there. You know Cam Babb's going to be there. You know Noah Potter after the eye surgery is going to be there after he self-reported that on social media. But the guys that are like in for a week and out for a week, you kind of feel for them. You want them to have their opportunity, but there are some shorter rotations, but I kind of mentioned it last week, and I'll say it again this week. You shorten the bench, so you don't think that you're going to have to go that deep at some positions, but that bench is very short at linebacker.
El Suzabo asked, did they take the entire team to Ann Arbor? I hope everyone gets a chance to go. They do not. There are restrictions on the travel squad. You can only travel, 70 guys, 72 guys, something like that. So it's not even every
70, 72. Yeah, because you're not.
Yeah, it's somewhere in there. You don't get every scholarship player there. You don't get every walk-on there. Generally, true freshmen who are not playing, who are definitely not playing. So like true freshman offensive linemen, for example, unless it's Donovan Jackson, a lot of those guys are not going to make the trip because it's like if you're third or fourth on the depth chart, you're not going to go. And that's an NCAA thing. That's a thing that they just, they want to limit the number of players that have to fly in an airplane, stay in a hotel. It's just a cost-saving thing. If it was up to Ohio State, I think they would obviously travel everyone. But that's just, that's an NCAA rule on that.
Who we didn't see on the list? We may as well address the elephant in the room.
Well, and I was about to get to Ty Yoon's comment. Whoever spread the false rumor on CJ and Hickman, can we Squid Game them? That would probably
I still haven't watched that yet. I still haven't gotten around to Squid Game.
It would be a little excessive, but yeah, I mean, and here's the thing: just because you're not on the availability report does not mean that you're 100% and have been 100% all week. That's an important distinction to draw. This is a time of year when sometimes guys get sick, sometimes guys are hurt. Not, no one is 100% this time of year. Now, if you're not on the availability report, it means you're going to be there. Sometimes you're not on the availability report. Even if you're not on the availability report, we have seen guys not play who were not on the availability report. I do expect both of those guys to play today. So again, keep the toaster out of the bathtub. Stroud and Hickman, I expect both of those guys to play. But it doesn't mean that they're 100% right now. So that's just, there are some important distinctions to draw there. Dan Dawson says we're good with Mayan and Henderson. I mean, realistically, Tony, there's the two running backs especially those two running backs. It's the linebackers. They're short, but if you had to choose three linebackers, those would be the three you would probably choose. They've got two running backs other than Pryor, but two running backs who've played substantial minutes this season. If you had to choose two running backs, those are probably the two you'd choose.
100%. We've seen Mayan Williams step in for Travion Henderson, rush for 100 yards a few weeks ago, and he's done this before. He won the job out of fall camp. He was the number one guy. We've seen what he's capable of. So yeah, I think those are your two best running backs. And so if you've got your two best, go with them. And does Michigan have their two best? We don't know. And how healthy is Blake Corum? We don't know. Certainly can't be 100%, I would think. If he didn't play last week, you don't go from not playing to 100% for a running back when you've got, I think, a leg issue. So there are going to be some issues there. But yeah, I losing Master Teague, not having him out there, that's unfortunate for him. I don't know that it really impacts Ohio State much at all with the two guys who are going to get the majority of the carries. If Master Teague plays, he gets 3 or 4 carries at most, and I think those 3 or 4 carries could probably be better used by Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson in this game. And we'll see. And we'll see if teams can continue to have success, running backs continue to have success against Michigan as they have of late. Because you get these two guys going, they can make people miss in the second level. They can turn a 6-yarder into a 9-yarder and move those chains and get you set up for a second and short, a third and short, where the entire offensive playbook is open to you, which then makes life even more difficult for the Michigan defense. So there's a lot there in terms of just staying ahead, staying on time, not getting behind the chains, and those guys are two of the best in the Big Ten at doing that, honestly.
Super chat from contributor to the Hugh. Bold prediction: Olave and Wilson hit 1,000 yards in this game. Obviously, it's probably a gimme with Wilson, but I think Olave does it too. Just to give you guys an idea, Garrett Wilson is currently 61 yards short of 1,000. So yes, I would consider that pretty close to a gimme. Olave 848. He needs 152 yards today. Now that's pretty bold. 152 yards for Olave would be quite a bit. It's not undoable, but
Just
I
a pair
think
of
Michigan.
76-yard touchdowns. I mean, come on, man.
Well, okay, well, settle down. We'll get to you in a minute. We'll get your thoughts in a minute. But to me, I think Michigan's game plan is going to be they're going to have to stop the run and they're going to have to sit back and try and avoid the big plays. So I think that intermediate passing game is where Ohio State's going to have to live today, because I don't think Michigan can afford to let Travion Henderson gash him to death, and I don't think they can risk giving up shots over the top. So I think that intermediate passing game. So I think unless he's breaking a couple tackles, to get to 152 yards, that's probably 8 to 10 catches. Unless they hit a couple big ones. So Kevin, what? Now, Kevin, you can do your math. Go ahead.
I don't want to say anything now. You hurt my feelings.
Just Tom, remember, receptions from the 34-yard line will not count. So
that's true. Now, is that true for contributor to the Hugh as well?
That is correct.
Just for me?
No,
Okay.
That's for everybody. 34-yard line is off limits. But 152, I think it's going to take 10 catches, and the desire to keep everything in front of you, especially if the weather is going to be an issue. Like if you want to force Ohio State to small chunks and hope that the snow and the cold helps you, Kevin, we know Ohio State's patient, but is this a better is this a more viable plan for Michigan, hoping the weather makes the Buckeyes a little bit more inconsistent on just the completing random routine catches? Like it's not going to help, but will it be enough?
Well, I mean, this is also the team that tried to untie players' shoes and things like that. So, I mean, maybe hoping for that, or that, that. I don't know. I mean, I don't think that that's very viable for hoping that the weather is going to slow Ohio State down, because they've got to play in it too, and their offense is not very explosive. And okay, if you can sit there and go station to station, as I said earlier, then that's fine. But I've watched Michigan bog down against Rutgers. I've watched Michigan bog down in a lot of other games, and Ohio State is significantly better than Rutgers. So I just, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that that's going to be. I think the weather, if anything, is going to be more detrimental to Michigan than it would be to Ohio State.
JD Fegan, Tony, you have no more than 5 minutes to answer this question. It's not even a question, just a statement. But I think it's a powerful one. No more than 5 minutes. We could really use Tate Martell today. Go. Tony, your thoughts.
Well, I think Ohio State has solved some of their red zone issues, but you would no longer have anything to solve with Tate Martell in the red zone, running that read option, throwing his perfection type of his accuracy out there. We've seen him go 10 for 10 in a game this year, or a couple of years ago, 11 for 11, possibly even. So the accuracy is there. The ability to run is there. The moxie overflowing. There is so much moxie. That's really one of the issues of having him in a quarterback room. It creates so much moxie. You almost have to have him in a separate room, and that way he can just be himself. But yes, if you get him out there, he can run. He will put Michigan's defense in a bind, because they're like, well, he's like Barry Sanders with the running game. He's like Dan Marino with the throw. How do you defend him? Really, you don't. You just back off and let him score. That way you can get the ball back and just try to answer that touchdown. Because if you put up a fight against him, you're just going to make him mad. You don't want to make Tate Martell mad, because you know what happens when he gets angry. He turns into the Incredible Hulk, and he grows 3 sizes, and he is a legit 6'3" at that point.
All right, that was worth every minute. I think we actually picked up viewers during that. I don't know how that's possible, but it is a day full of miracles. Super chat from contributor to the Hugh. Yes, Tom, I actually try to be bold. Unlike you, so hurtful. so hurtful. By the way, that's an 11-pointer, so if it hits, I beat both of you. False. Plays from the 34 don't count. That's true. Yeah, I mean 152. I think I picked Ohio State's leading wide receiver to have like 75 yards more than Michigan's leading wide receiver this week. So, I mean that's pretty significantly bold, I would say, and I think that might have just been a 1-pointer. So, I think you may be giving yourself too much credit. Now Bilal Asaf says Tate McCarthy. Now, I think the question there is, what do we expect from J.J. McCarthy? We haven't really talked about J.J. McCarthy this morning. And, my theory all year has been that Michigan has really mishandled the J.J. McCarthy situation because they need someone like J.J. McCarthy to be able to give them the downfield passing and the running threat in the quarterback position that McNamara doesn't really bring. But I think Jim Harbaugh has mismanaged that this year, where he's been so worried about winning each individual week that he sort of set the bigger goals of beating Ohio State aside. I think you need to have a big day from J.J. McCarthy today in order to beat Ohio State. And it's possible, but without him having played so much earlier in the year, I don't know. I mean, you saw what happened the last time he was in a big game spot against Michigan State, and it didn't go well. I mean, Kevin, what are you expecting from J.J. McCarthy today?
A lot of short passes. But, taking that aside from that, I think he'll do okay. I mean, I think we're going to still see a little bit of a platoon with, with the other guy. But I'm not I'm not going to name him. I'm expecting him to complete a couple of big passes that are 20, 25 yarders. I don't think that Ohio State's going to be able to completely lock everybody down at all times, but with that being said, I don't think that he's not going to come out there and have some sort of Denard Robinson effect on this team and be able to be like, get on my back. I'm going to lead you to the promised land. I look at him and I still see kind of a Spate, Patterson type of O'Corn. I mean, there's just nothing remarkable about him. And for sure, people are going to be like, well, don't give them message board material, bulletin board material. Well, if they're listening to what I'm saying, then, I'm much more powerful than I ever thought that I was. I mean, I am pretty powerful, but, I'm not expecting a whole lot out of him. I don't have the right spreadsheet up. 215 yards throwing.
That's McNamara, not McCarthy, though.
Oh, well, they're the same guy. I'm sorry. I was too busy playing in the chat.
I am expecting a handful of plays from J.J. McCarthy because I think, as I've said here all week, that you got to play all of your best offensive guys, and he's one of them. Now, his problem has been putting the ball on the ground, throwing interceptions, and limited opportunities. He does allow you to dial up some big plays. He does allow for some deception in the running game. So I think you need to use all of that, and you just hope that he's not going to make some mistakes. And we know he has said some outspoken things about Ohio State and Ryan Day and all of that stuff through recruiting and after being signed by Michigan, where some will tell you he wanted to come to Ohio State. Ohio State chose Kyle McCord over J.J. McCarthy, and I don't think McCarthy's ever going to forget about that. And he's going to try to make Ryan Day never forget about it as well.
Well, that's one of the interesting things here is Ohio State and Michigan don't recruit head-to-head that much anymore. Like 10 years ago, there was a lot of head-to-head Ohio State-Michigan battles. Now it's like Ohio State's recruiting a lot head-to-head against Georgia and Alabama and Oklahoma and other programs kind of around the country. There's just, and most of the Ohio kids are just kind of like automatically going to Ohio State at this point, and the ones that don't are going to Notre Dame. Michigan is just not recruiting head-to-head against Ohio State anymore. So, yeah, to have a guy who Ohio State was looking at fairly seriously end up at Michigan, that's a little bit unusual. I mean, Ohio State was not going after Cade McNamara. Ohio State, looked at Donovan Edwards, but took two running backs ahead of Donovan Edwards in this class. Ohio State was not looking at Hassan Haskins. Ohio State was not looking at, Andrew Vistardis or any of those guys. There aren't that many head-to-head recruiting battles. And a lot of the guys Michigan has gotten in Ohio, Taco Charlton and Jake Butt, were people who Ohio State either didn't offer or didn't prioritize. So, yes, that is kind of an unusual – that used to be a much bigger storyline every year, and it's like that's kind of gone away in a lot of ways, which is kind of crazy. PFlaw says almost 1 hour family. Yes, 56 minutes right now. Nick says Bryson Shaw is somehow the best option at safety. Biggest mystery of the year. I mean, Shaw has graded out a champion several times recently, and he has not been perfect, but I think if they had their druthers, Josh Proctor would still be back there. But Josh Proctor broke his leg against Oregon, so now Bryson Shaw is the best option, and he has not won that position by default. They've tried a bunch of other people there. It's not like they haven't, looked at some other people. They moved Ryan Watts back there at one point, and then it doesn't seem like that's worked. They've shuffled other guys around, and it doesn't seem like they have another guy in that spot. Safety is a spot where they're in on a couple of very, very highly ranked guys in the 2022 class, Xavier Nwampa and Zion Branch. So, there may be help on the way there, and Proctor is presumably going to be back next year as well. But I think Bryson Shaw has not been perfect this year by any means, and I don't know that he's been truly outstanding this year by any means. But I also don't think, Tony, he hasn't been as bad as people are kind of giving him credit for.
Yeah, and we'll get to the super chats here in a second.
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I think what people need to remember is they've lost Josh Proctor, they've lost Jansen Dunn, they've lost Jalen Johnson. Like, they're down some safeties. Lathan Ransom is not what they're looking for there. They like him at the cover safety. Cameron Martinez has gotten a little bit of a look in practice there. So they've tried some other things, but there are no other options at this point. And it's not Marcus Hooker. He's not on the availability report this week. Last week he was. Like, it's Bryson Shaw, and you can say all of these things you want. Like, why don't they try somebody else? They've looked, and Bryson Shaw continues to be the best guy. Gets them in the best position to play. Has made some mistakes, yes, but is if he's getting everybody else in position to play, to do their jobs, they'll take that right now. And because he has also made some good plays, and it's not you see him get beat on one angle, and it's like, that guy should never be out there. It's like once or twice per game you notice him, and if you don't notice him any other times, then he's doing his job. And if the defense is limiting the opponent to 20, 24 points, they're doing their job as well. And he's a large part of that, being the guy who calls stuff in the secondary and gets guys lined up. So I understand, but it is what it is at this point, and you're not going to change it. So maybe he's not going to get benched. So maybe support him a little bit. Not that people aren't, but like, accept it at this point. Just go ahead and accept it.
All right, super chat from NH. Live in Michigan, but grew up in Whitehall, Columbus, and went to high school with Archie at Columbus Eastmore. Go Bucks. Kevin, you're old enough that did you go to high school with Archie Griffin?
No. I was born in 71, so no, I did not go to high school with Archie Griffin, and I grew up on the other side of the country. But there is a great brewery in Whitehall named Two Tones, and I want to take the one tone that I know, Boney Tony, to Two Tones to go get a beer at some point. So that's how I can bring Whitehall up.
If you're buying.
And you know what else is in Whitehall, Kevin?
Del Taco.
Del Taco, Kevin's favorite taco place in the entire world, Del Taco.
I went through the Del Taco drive-through this week because Kevin had mentioned it, and it's not near where I live. It's a 30-minute drive home, but I was like 15 minutes away from it in Westerville. I'm like, you know what? Let's try it, because they have vegetarian and vegan options. So that was okay for my wife. I was pretty impressed. It keeps. That was the most surprising thing. It keeps a lot better than Taco Bell. The hard tacos, the crunchy tacos, those are really good. They're bigger than the Taco Bell tacos, and I think they're like $1. So they're cheaper. They last. I was impressed. Was it the best taco place ever?
No.
I mean, no, but like, taco trucks are better, but they also have good corn tortilla tacos.
And
those
taco
are like
trucks, it's
$1 as well.
like a $4 taco. I mean, granted, the quality of the food is a lot better in a taco truck, but for that fast food drive-through, Del Taco is fantastic, and they were dumb enough to employ me when I was 15 years old.
Get tamales, you can get fries. So yeah, I recommend. Will I do it a lot? I mean, no, because again, it's an hour there and back, and you've got to deal with traffic at either lunchtime or dinner time. So if you're in the area, give it a shot.
Tony, where we could potentially be headed if Ohio State wins the next 2 weeks Could be going back to Dallas. Could be headed back to Fuel City Taco Country.
I've got a place now. Since I didn't work with you guys the last time around that I was in Dallas, I lived in Dallas for 5 years. I've got a lot of local haunts there that are all very, very good food. So
Whataburger. Whataburger
yes,
2.
Whataburger, another Whataburger, Taco Cabana, Taco Bueno. No, I can do better than that.
All right, we got a couple super chats to get through. First of all, contributor to Hugh said, "Just joking. I am the most bold on the show." Agreed. Fantastic. So we're all on the same page there. Going back one, there was a super chat.
I'm finding it.
The most hated Michigan player of all time. And I guess from me, from DK, most hated Michigan player of all time, based on age and sort of when I started paying attention to the rivalry. I think it has to be Desmond Howard, just because he could have made his name with one punt return against Ohio State and doing the Heisman pose, and has sort of remained in the news, and not necessarily for he's not ingratiating himself to Ohio State fans at all, more recently in his current public facing role. So I think that's probably a pretty good option. Tony, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's Desmond Howard, and it's unfortunate. Like Desmond's wife and I follow each other and will interact on Twitter, so I'm careful not to be like overly critical of him on Twitter, but he sang the Michigan fight song on top of Ohio Stadium. Like,
oh, I forgot about that. What year was that?
I don't know. Was that 2002, 2004? I mean, it would have been a while ago because it was with Nick Lachey when he was doing the show with like Jessica Simpson and when he was a contributor. I don't know if it was 2006 maybe. So there's still that as well. But yeah, 91 I believe when he won the Heisman, he was that was a devastating game. Charles Woodson, the reason it's not him is because I have complete respect for Charles Woodson. And it's interesting how I really like Charles Woodson on Fox, like his insight that he provides on the pregame shows when I watched them last year. And I appreciate his demeanor, I guess, compared to what we've seen from Desmond over the years. So it's Desmond Howard for me. That's the easy answer, and I think that's the right answer, Kevin.
Tim Biakabatuka. And it was not because of him saying anything or being a jerk in media or anything like that. He went out there and he kicked their butts in that one game, and that was around, that was around those formative years for me. And thankfully I didn't have to figure out how to spell that last name, but for me it's Tim Biakabatuka because he broke my heart, like so many co-eds at Ohio State.
Yeah, that was a bad one. Just nothing they could do. Greg Belisari, Ryan Miller, they just had no shot against him, and just a relentless afternoon that will live forever. Has never been matched, probably never will be matched, just because like how do you match 313 odd yards?
Mm-hmm. El Suzaba wants to know, where's the Michigan availability report? They do not put one out. That's just Ohio State does it the way they do it. That's not the way most teams do it. This is not the NFL where every team is required to put out an availability report. They could just say nothing. The way Ryan Day has chosen to handle injuries is he doesn't talk about them at all during the week. He will not address injuries. Every once in a while, in a great while, you can sort of indirectly glean some information from the way he answers a question about a guy. But by and large, there's no information about injuries during the week. It only comes out when the availability report comes out. That used to come out on Fridays. Then it came out on Saturday mornings, 3 hours before the game. Then it was 2 hours before the game. Today it was like an hour 15 before the game. So eventually the availability report will come out midway through the second quarter, and we will all report on it immediately. So,
well, yeah, they drop it when they do because they're like, well, you're going to see who's out there at some point. So, right. There's no reason to hide it. And, most schools do release two deep. So Ohio State doesn't release it too deep. Michigan releases nothing. So it just kind of is what it is. I think we will at some point get to a standardized setup, but I think we're going to have to get to the point where we have some sort of college football czar where we have parity in terms of a lot of other little aspects that people have been able to finagle through the years.
Looking at a
Caveman,
photo of Blake Corum on Twitter in pregame shorts like other teammates, eating some candy. No indication that he's not going to play. Like he's dressed as other guys are in pregame with hoodie and shorts, sweats, socks, shoes. So like we know that pregame dress doesn't mean you're playing or not, but if you're not dressed in pregame, that's usually a pretty good sign. So he looks like the rest of his teammates. So at this point, we knew he dressed last week and traveled. So I guess I'm not telling you anything that we didn't know last week. We'll see if he still plays though.
Yeah, and that's he was dressed. Yeah, he was dressed for the Maryland game on the sidelines, but didn't actually play. Um, Caveman says Mark Fetter says, Tom, you owe Kevin an apology. What on earth would I have to apologize to Kevin for?
Oh
I
my
mean, there's
God, the list is
a
long and
lot more
distinguished.
information. A lot more information there. Caveman said, "Stop it! Stop with the Shaw is the best option. Lies. They haven't tried squat. I mean, Tony, was that some kind of a fever dream where they were shifting different guys to deep safety during practice and trying different guys and I mean, I assume that the coaching staff is not actively throwing the season, so I assume that they genuinely view Shaw as the best option and have probably had the opportunity to take in more information about the position because they are at practice every week and watching practice as we and many YouTube commenters likely are not.
If you just tell me who you think should have gotten a shot, and we'll tell you whether they have already and didn't do it, or why they can't have a shot. Like, don't say put Denzel Burke back there. It's like, oh, so you want Legend Cavazos now starting at corner, and you're going to take away your best corner because you want somebody else at free safety? Like, they have tried everybody that they are comfortable moving. Court Williams is not a free safety. He's like 6'1", 225 pounds. He's a bullet. He might be a linebacker next year. The same with Craig Young. He's like 6'4", 225. You're not going to put him back there as the deep safety. Ronnie Hickman is your starting bullet. You're not going to change him and put him as free safety. There's, the guys that they've tried. I remember 2 months ago, Ryan Watts getting the number 2 reps in pregame warmups as free safety, but never playing. That was like, okay, that was the week they're going to start to ease him in. He's never been eased in because clearly like that they've got better options than what they feel they have with him. And at this point, I don't even know who the number 2 free safety is. Is it, it's not Andre Turrentine, who could be a cover safety, could be a strong safety. Like, we don't even know yet. Is it Cameron Martinez? Is it Marcus Williamson because he's a veteran? Like, it's probably Marcus Hooker at this point, which gives you an idea. Marcus Hooker got benched last year because he went from starter to not playing. So Bryson Shaw has gone from starter to starter because he's the best option, and they found better options last year than Hooker in a year where they had almost no options. This year they've tried their options, and again, they're without some options now, including their number 1 option, Josh Proctor. So it is what it is. They recruit a lot of defensive backs. They're going to continue to recruit more for just such an occasion, but I don't know who else they could put back there. Let's just say that.
Chris Bird says, what's up, guys, from Djibouti, Africa? Always appreciate people checking in from overseas. That's always fun. Lots of talk in the chat about if we are Earth, Wind, and Fire, which is which. I have traveled with both of these two and eaten and good amount of food. I can tell you there's an argument for wind for all three. But, yeah, I mean, you can
Noon
share
is
your
fire.
thoughts in the
That's
chat.
all I'm going to say. I'm fire.
You can share your thoughts in the chat. Cameron Snyder says Blake Corum's mother commented saying he would play on someone's post. I mean, that has certainly been my expectation all week, is that Blake Corum would play. He will, I think Tony is the player who, Hassan Haskins is fine. Hassan Haskins is a solid back. But Corum, I think, gives them a big play possibility, because I don't think they trust Donovan Edwards in the run game yet, a big play possibility on the ground that Hassan Haskins doesn't give them.
Hassan Haskins can do some good things provided the blocking is there. Blake Corum is the one guy who can do some things if the blocking is not where it should be, because he can make guys miss. He's got some J.K. Dobbins to him. where he can, he's got the jump cut and he can go lateral, which is not something that Hassan Haskins necessarily does. So that first guy into the backfield may bring Hassan Haskins down, may not bring Blake Corum down, and that's really, if you can get past that first guy, now you've got some room to run. And Blake Corum is another guy like Mayan Williams. The defense can lose him behind the offensive line, and then he just comes out and you didn't even know he was over on the right. You thought he was somewhere in the middle. So he's like 5'8", 200 pounds. There's not a lot to him, and so you can lose track of him. So he's got that. He's deceptive. He's quick. He's fast. He's stronger than he looks, but still probably not as strong as he needs to be all the time. But just a guy, if things break down, he can fix it. And he can do a better job of fixing it than Hassan Haskins.
Would you compare him to Sam McGuffey in terms of legendary undersized Michigan running backs?
I agree with the more Mike Hart comparisons than Sam McGuffey. But he's got more explosion than Mike Hart, but not necessarily Mike Hart's ability to find the hole. Like Mike Hart, I don't know how he was so good. He just was. And Blake Corum is not at that level in terms of just consistent, like the consistency, because Blake Corum can sometimes just show up and give you 15 carries for 45 yards, and it's like, well, that did us no good.
Caveman clarifying, what I'm saying is, why are they in this position at safety? Would any of these options play anywhere else? Recruiting at safety might need to be better. I mean, a lot of these guys would play lots of other places. Would they all play at Georgia this particular year? No. But there was a big issue with defensive back recruiting several years ago, and that doesn't just immediately get fixed the next minute. They had to throw Lathan Ransom in as a true freshman last year as a result of some of that, because Marcus Hooker, let's be honest, has just not panned out. I think he came in relatively lowly rated, and everyone went, well, he's Malik's brother, so he's just going to be Malik in a couple of years. And it's like, well, no, that's not how that has worked out. And they had real serious issues at cornerback recruiting during the Taver Johnson period when he was the cornerbacks coach. They missed on a lot of guys they shouldn't have missed on. They had a couple late flips. Clark Phillips flipped late. He's starting for Utah right now. He is a dynamic player. You add him to this defensive backfield, that fills one of those slots. You add Jordan Battle to this defensive backfield. He was another late flip to Alabama. He started at safety for Alabama last year on that dynamite Alabama defense. Like, they've had a couple misses in recruiting. Taver Johnson just took a couple of years off in recruiting. It's all getting better. The return of Kerry Combs has really, impacted things on the recruiting front in the defensive backfield, which is one of the reasons they really, 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 really want to keep Kerry Combs around. But it takes some time. Like, some of these guys are, Denzel Burke is a true freshman playing corner right now. Like, that is a spot where you wouldn't necessarily want to have a true freshman playing, but he's been so good that they've been able to do that. Cam Brown and Seven Banks have both been banged up on and off all fall. There's some issues there. Jordan Hancock and J.K. Johnson are two people that I think generally people around the program were talking about as being maybe even, people that were more excited about than Denzel Burke. But both of those guys came in over the summer. They didn't early enroll, so they weren't here for the spring. So that makes it harder to get on the field. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. I don't think that's a long-term concern. I think there's concerns at linebacker too, but you've got Hicks coming in, CJ Hicks coming in 22. You've got Sonny Styles coming in 23. Like, you've got some elite talent coming in, and you have other guys coming in as well. Obviously, Gabe Powers coming in. Whether he's a linebacker or defensive end, we'll see. But there's a lot of talent still coming in. But that's the origin of some of the issues in the back end of the defense right now, in terms of depth. And they were planning on having Josh Proctor be that dude. If Josh Proctor was still back there, you wouldn't be having a lot of these conversations. But Josh Proctor broke his leg against Oregon, and he's been out for the season. So that's the depth is not quite there, but that's the answer as to why. Roto COD says, I actually like the idea of Seven Banks being a safety. Feel like he has the body type for that. I mean, he has not been healthy all year, Kevin. I mean, Seven Banks has been, he was banged up over the summer. He didn't play in the spring. He wasn't quite right in fall camp. He missed a bunch of stuff at the beginning of the season. He came back a little bit, and he's banged up again now. I think my understanding is that's a separate injury from what the issue was over the summer. So, yeah, I mean, sure. If he's healthy, like, sure, I could. I mean, could you see him being a safety?
I think I could see him being safety. I could see Legend Cavazos being a safety as well. I saw Cavazos play safety, and then they moved him to corner. I believe that wasn't until he got to IMG. I think he may have been a safety in San Antonio. I think part of the lure of getting him to IMG was moving him over to corner. But back to Seven Banks, I think, yeah, I certainly think that he has, the abilities to be a very successful safety. And the problem is guys don't want to slide down. They don't want, I mean, corner is that big money position. Safety still is big money, but not as big as a corner. I mean, in terms of where, NFL pay scales are. So nobody wants to do that. But I think that at some point you have to have this conversation with yourself of kind of had a wasted season because I just couldn't stay healthy. I need to put myself in a position to be successful at another level if that's what's going to happen. And I think that's going to happen at safety because I think that the corner room is going to fill up. And, we've made it an hour and 25 minutes and nobody has mentioned Eli Ricks, surprisingly. So, I think that he has the tools to be a successful safety.
And we've seen other guys do it before. Kurt Coleman came in as a corner and has played forever in the NFL as a safety. More recently, Jordan Fuller was a corner at Ohio State for about a day and then got moved to safety and is now a captain in the NFL. Like, it's not the end of the world. Sean Wade even played some safety before he was finally moving into his slot position as a slot corner and then as an outside corner. Like, I think it's for guys to not want to do it. And Seven Banks reading his hype, and I'm going to assume he was aware of so many people saying first rounder. He's probably not going to want to move to safety this year. Contrast that with Thayer Munford, who wanted to show he was the best offensive tackle in the nation this year, and then went to the coaches and said, "Hey, put me at left guard so that we can get DeJuan Jones in the game." So, I mean, there are some guys willing to move in a year where most would be unwilling. Seven Banks, long, tall-ish, 6'1", and long and fast. Given what we've seen from him at corner, probably a better option at safety. We'll see what the NFL has to say. He's already said his goodbyes to Ohio State and said that last week was his final game in Ohio Stadium. So we'll see what the future holds for him.
All right, we do have a super chat from Terry Kovac. Would you agree if our secondary has a great game, we win big? Kevin, does the secondary need to have a great game in order for us to win big?
I mean, I think that they need to have a pretty good game to be able to win the game because, I mean, if Ohio State holds true and holds Michigan to 102.3 yards or whatever their average is, just based on normality, if the secondary has a big game, I don't see how Michigan puts up any points. So, I think that the secondary has to play at least a solid B. I think if they play a solid B, we're not going to really have a lot of white knuckle moments of where everybody's going to be worrying. I don't think they have to go out there and completely shut them down to nothingness. I don't think that's necessarily realistic. I don't think we're going to see a situation of where it's Michigan State and they hold Peyton Thorne and the Michigan State offense to 166 yards or whatever that may have been. But the better the secondary plays, I think the less drama and the less question that we're going to have in this one.
All right, super chat from Talk O Nation. Does Aiden Hutchinson skip arm days, and do you think his chicken arms will affect his ability to rush C.J. Stroud today? Tony, does Aiden Hutchinson skip arm day?
Well, he was. It'd be funny if somebody were to ask him, like, "Hey, do you think your chicken arms will be able to rush C.J. Stroud? How do you think your chicken arms are going to handle Ohio State's offensive line?" I do not. I'm going to assume he does not skip arm days. This year, Aiden Hutchinson has started to look like the Bosa brother that his father oddly compared him to. I think did he say he was like the third Bosa brother? And it's like, but aren't you, as the father, should you really be saying stuff like that? But he has looked very good at times this year, and really is a consistent defender. And I know some Ohio State fans may not want to give him some credit. You should. Is he a Bosa? No. Is he Chase Young? No. But if he's Sam Hubbard or Tyquan Lewis, which I think he's very clearly that of that ilk and maybe even better, that's still a lot. Like that's something that you have to be concerned about. I will continue to mention that people may be overlooking Zach Harrison and Tyreek Smith and all of this talk about Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, because Zach Harrison and Tyreek Smith will not be facing the caliber of offensive tackles that Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo will be. So just keep an eye on that matchup. Don't forget about that one as we get into it. And one last thing I'll say as we start to wrap up, the team, Tom and Kevin, that runs the jet sweeps better in this game will win. Mark it down.
I know. I'm Mitch Rossi jet sweep. I've been calling for it all year.
Mm-hmm. Jeffrey Reese has a good question. Ryan Day is a master of find the fish. Probably already asked, but who do you think is the fish? Kevin, you do a pretty in-depth statistical breakdown. Who do you think? And Tony obviously does Michigan Monday. Who does Ohio State try and pick on today, and especially in the passing game?
Harbaugh. No, I think that I go after Turner. I mean, I go right after Turner. I think that's the guy that you go after. I mean, just put it right on him. I don't know where Daxton Hill is necessarily going to set up on. I don't know if he tries to go after, if he gets on JSN or what happens there. But we got on the Mark Rogers show and it was talking about putting Turner 1-on-1 against somebody. I'm going right after him. You sit there and you beat him a couple times. You're supposed to have a short memory in terms of being a cornerback. You get beat a couple of times. What year was it that they went after? What was it, 28? I can't think of the guy's name. They went after him.
Brandon Watson, 2018.
Yes, I mean they went after him over and over and over and over and over again. And maybe because they saw him as maybe the weak link. I'm not saying Turner's necessarily the weak link, but that's who I'm going after.
Yeah, I think wherever the safety isn't, whoever that corner is, whether it's Vincent Gray or DJ Turner, I'll take Ohio State 1-on-1 against any defensive back Michigan has to offer, and that includes Jackson Smith and Jigba against Daxton Hill. I think all of those guys, none of them can be handled 1-on-1 by anything Michigan has, knowing that, again, we all really like Daxton Hill. He is the best guy in their secondary. And then also, even in terms of the safeties, again, they'll probably be starting a freshman safety and they'll open up in nickel. So they'll have him and then a veteran, the freshman Rod Moore, I believe, and then the senior safety Brad Hawkins. Those are going to be your two safeties. Daxton Hill probably in the slot. So there's Ohio State will spread them out and look for the advantage. Pre-snap, will the picture change pre-snap to post-snap for CJ Stroud? Will he see what he's expecting, and will that be what he sees after the snap, and how well will he be able to handle it? And I think it's not necessarily targeting one guy. It's targeting wherever the advantage is. That's where Ohio State will go. And I don't think it's going to stay just the same guy throughout the game.
And one of the changes from 2018 is Michigan doesn't play nearly as much man. Like Don Brown was just like blitz you and play man, and so you knew where Brandon Watson was going to be, who Brandon Watson was going to be covering, and that made it a lot easier to play find the fish. If you're in a zone, that's not necessarily as easy. You're flipping sides of the field and all that kind of stuff, and so you can try and manipulate the defense a little bit, but it's not necessarily as easy as when they're in man. Nick Stamen, and this is one that Kevin has punched up 3 times, so Kevin must have an answer to this one. Would y'all ever consider doing a live in-game commentary? And no, you can't show the actual broadcast, but we can watch our own broadcast on mute and listen to our comments on the game live. Kevin, your thoughts?
What would we talk about in the post game if we did that? I mean, because if we were up there for 3.5 hours, we wouldn't have a pre and we wouldn't have a post. And I mean, I wouldn't want to do it. But if there was overwhelming call for it, then okay. But I think that at some point, you guys would not want to be listening to us the whole time. I don't think we would want to be talking about the whole game. It would really certainly slow down the production of work coming out right out of the game. So, it's an interesting thing. We actually talked about during the open week, maybe doing a watch along for a game, and then realized that's a lot of talking. That is a lot of talking. And just to even make it worse, we all consume our games differently, if it's streaming or satellite or cable, and you all consume your games differently. So somebody could see something before everybody else. And I watch like the press box stat feed. And so I see things sometimes 20 seconds before I see it on the TV. It could end up being a real nightmare.
Well, and this feed is like 20 or 30 seconds behind like live anyway. So we would be reacting to like the previous play while the current play is going on if you're watching via cable. So yeah, we have talked about it. It's just we 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 talk a lot on these shows in our own podcasts, like
Mhm.
3.5 hours during the game where, and this is not necessarily the game where any of us are all that talkative anyway.
Mhm.
So we have talked about it, but I don't know that we would ever do it for this game, and hopefully never be in a position to actually do it for this game again.
Jake Anderson, Super Chat, Sirius XM channels for the game, Ohio State, channel 93, Michigan, channel 195. Adjust your listening accordingly if you want to listen to the Sirius XM, the radio broadcast, and not to the TV broadcast. So an Alabama score prediction in there. I assume that was a score prediction for this game and not for the Alabama game, because I think that prediction was a lot closer than the Alabama game probably will be.
Right.
So
Exactly.
all right, I think we are going to wrap it up now. We're heading into the game, so we will be back, of course, after the game. Do us a favor, hit that thumbs up on this video. That will help other folks find it. Also, hit that bell, subscribe to this channel. Then you get notified as soon as we go live at the end of the game. We went live a few minutes before the end of the game, I think, last week. I'm guessing this one will be a little closer, and we probably will wait till after the game. But generally, it's pretty soon after the game. We will be back on here to break down everything that we saw, everything that we heard, answer all of your questions, and much more. And, if we have a monster audience this afternoon, I don't know. I mean, we typically go an hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours on those. So, sometimes there's stuff to talk about after an Ohio State Michigan game. We'll see how long we go this afternoon, but these are always a lot more fun with all you guys here to chat with and answer your questions and get your feedback on stuff. So we do genuinely appreciate you being a part of it. And so thank you for joining us, and we will see you right back here after the game.